I've coached over 300 high-performing founders, bootstrap killers, venture-backed CEOs, operators earning 20K a month with no team, teams putting in 5 million per year with 15 staff members, and almost all of those entrepreneurs or CEOs were sabotaged by the same invisible patterns. And unless you see it, you'll spend years scaling with friction, pressure, and emotional chaos without knowing why. And that pattern is not in your business model, it's not in your funnel, and it's not in your team or your products. That pattern is in your mind. I'm Castillo, founder of Selfmastered, Performance Institute for Founders. And what I'm about to show you is that invisible force that is stealing your best hours, your sharpest thinking, and your momentum. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. And once you eliminate it, your life becomes exponentially easier, simpler, and more joyful. I call it mental friction. And it's that invisible drag that lives between what you want to do and what you end up doing. And you never see it on your Stripe dashboard, but it appears everywhere. You open your laptop with a plan, and 3 hours later, you've barely touched the thing that matters. You delay the sales email. You spend 40 minutes tweaking a button on your landing page. You tell yourself it's not the right time to launch. You hold off making a hard decision because you need to think it through. And from the outside, it seems like you're working, but from the inside, you know you're wasting your time. That mental friction, which typically manifests as procrastination, hesitation, perfectionism, overthinking, emotional noise, steals your best hours. And the worst part is, if you don't remove it, it ends up creating an identity that makes you believe that's just how you work, that you are wired that way. Wrong. Anyone is cut out for business if they train their mind to be. Because once you remove that invisible friction at the root, you stop running this billion-dollar vision with a $10 brain like most people are doing. And let me tell you exactly what this looks like with a case study. So we had a client earning about 20K a month. Crazy smart, hardworking, but subconsciously afraid of scaling past that level. So every time he needed to do a growth move, like, hiring or launching or promoting, he kind of got stuck. Decision after decision got delayed, and every delay eroded his confidence. So he ended up telling me that he was just burnt out from business. But he wasn't burnt out. His brain was just sabotaging any growth effort because he was afraid of what might happen. He thought it was bring chaos that he was not going to be able to handle. Once we removed that mental friction through specific training protocols, he let himself do the things he knew he needed to do. And within about 4 months, he was doing 70K a month without changing the offer or working more hours. But because he removed the mental friction that was actually getting in his own way. And that is not unique to him. It happens to everyone. At some point, your mind will experience this mental friction. I've seen these patterns in myself, in 50K a year founders, in 500K a month founders. The numbers change, but the pattern doesn't. Mental friction, in fact, it scales with your ambition. So if you don't remove it at a 50K a year level, you will suffer from it at a 5 million a year level. And then the stakes are much higher. Now the question is, what creates this mental friction? See, this mental friction is created because your brain evolved to help you survive in 100,000 before Christ, not run a high growth business in 2025. This is why these days you're wired for short-term rewards, avoiding pain and saving energy through shortcuts, because that is what kept you alive 100,000 years ago. That survival mechanism does not help you anymore. In fact, it hinders your performance. And unless you rewire it, you will be forever stuck. And the typical intervention failed to make anyone more productive. They're just band-aids that don't solve the core issue. The pressure of self-doubt and inconsistency doesn't come because you don't know how to do or how to organize your day. It's because your mind isn't trained to do it under pressure. And most founders never train this. Every elite athlete trains his mind. Very few business owners train their mind. And that's why the results are the ones they are. And when things are good, they coast. But when things are bad, they crumble. Their mental defaults are completely misaligned with what they're trying to build. If you build your business on top of unresolved fear, identity confusion, poor stress management, and the need to prove something to someone, and that system gets triggered, your execution goes down the drain. And that simple truth is that you can't out-strategize a flawed operating system. If your brain defaults to overthinking, second-guessing, and emotional overactivity, you will sabotage your execution no matter how smart you are. Because that is not an intelligent issue. It's a mental performance issue. And if you don't rewire it, every week is going to feel like a war. A war between what you're capable of and what you actually get done. These patterns destroy momentum, they poison consistency, and they make success feel expensive emotionally, mentally, spiritually. Let me give you another example. Let's call him Peter, agency owner, making about 300K per year, but working about 70 to 75 hours, pretty much every day. And when we audited his mental friction, we found out that he had 2 to 3 false starts before beginning any important task, that execution friction. He had 1 hour per day lost in distraction due to bad emotional regulation every time he had, to talk to his team or whatever, and he couldn't really be effective about it. And he started even questioning whether he wanted to scale the business, just as in the previous example. And that friction wasn't just stealing time, he was eroding his confidence, exhausting his team because the guy was all over the place, and limiting his growth. His business was stuck because his mind was stuck. So what did we do? Well, we systematically removed that friction one step at a time. On the execution side, we created systems to make it automatic. We helped create systems to regulate his emotions and eventually align his identity with the entrepreneur he wanted to become. His work hours went down to about 50. Same market, same person, but a totally different mind. The bad news is that every founder has to go through this process to become successful. The good news is that anyone can do it. The key is to understand that mental friction is not random. It's systematic, it's predictable, and therefore systematically removable. And at Selfmastered, we have identified 5 domains in which it hides. One is what we call spiritual friction. It's having a lack of purpose, unclear direction, or external motivation. Or it can be mental friction, emotional reactivity, limiting beliefs, cognitive chaos. It can be physical friction, be low energy, poor recovery, having your nervous system dysregulated. It can be strategic, having unclear priorities or decision paralysis. Or executive, having attention deficit or procrastination patterns. And when friction exists in multiple domains, it compounds exponentially. A spiritually unfocused founder with poor physical energy and decision paralysis is just not 3 times less effective than one of our clients who is fully ramped up. He's like 27x less effective because each friction point multiplies the others. But once you systematically remove friction from each domain, the opposite happens. Clarity becomes energy. Energy multiplies decision-making. Decision-making multiplies execution. You become exponentially more effective. So every time we take on a new client, friction is present typically in every pillar. Typically in this way. This is the average client when we start working with them. First of all, spiritually, they're typically building business only for money or to prove a point. There's no deeper purpose. So that leads to emotional spiraling when things go bad because there's not a deeper why to actually do what they're doing. Mentally, there's typically anxiety spirals and imposter syndrome that lead to productivity loss. On the physical side, they're typically stress eating and sleep patterns are not dialed in, so they are low energy. And oftentimes they don't even have a fitness routine going for them. Strategically, pretty much all of them are chasing too many things at the same time, which leads to decision fatigue and low progress. And on the executive side of things, they start projects but don't finish them. They procrastinate, they constantly overthink. What we typically do is we don't treat symptoms. We remove every source of friction at the root. Spiritually, we work with them to unlock something called autotelic motivation, a deeper why behind our business, which leads to increased motivation and drive. Mentally wiring, we install emotional regulation protocols and belief restructuring systems that lead to unlimited self-confidence. Physically, we optimize stress, nutrition, meditation, and a bunch of other things that lead to elite performance. Strategically, we identify the most important growth lever and focus only on that. And executive-wise, we build systems that make them execute naturally. And what typically happens is if the business is less than 20K a month, within 2 to 3 months, they have double. And they get to 7 figures within 12 to 15 months. And all while the entrepreneur being radically happier and working way less. This ain't magic, really. This is the natural outcome of removing mental friction. Decisions become instant and accurate. Pressure becomes fuel instead of friction. Growth becomes inevitable because you're actually doing the things that lead to it. And you don't just become more productive. You literally become an elite performer. And over the past 8 years, we built a system that guarantees precisely that. And inside Selfmastered, this is what we do. We literally audit your 5 domains: spiritual, mental, physiological, strategic, executive. We locate the exact friction points in your performance and we install systems to eliminate them. No hacks, no BS, no apps, no bullshit, no fluff. A precise behavioral protocol that eliminates drag and friction, allowing you to execute at the level your mind is already capable of, but you have never trained it. The only thing between you and a performance is literally the invisible pattern you haven't removed. And if you're ready to remove it, book a decoding session with us. We'll find out pretty much in 30 minutes what has been holding you back for many years and give you specific recommendations to solve it on your own. And if you need our help and we have slots, we will invite you to our program. Every day you operate with mental friction is another day you're reinforcing the neural pathways of resistance. And over time, it becomes harder to rewire. So don't delay. This is the most important work you can do to get to the next level, both in your life and your business.